Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about the one of the important concept called lambda expressions here. So internally, these lambda expressions are working based on this particular functional interface. So what is the functional interface I created here? Observe carefully. Here I'm trying to create one numeric function, and this numeric function is having only one function call FUNC is expecting the integer parameter. Now I am implemented with help of this particular lambda body. Okay, so this is the simple example we identified with help of this particular example how we can use somewhere where we implemented this particular example. Yeah, this is the normal without using this particular lambda expression we implemented this particular code, and this particular code we come up with a lambda here. So whatever we are discussing is, so this is we implemented with help of this particular lambda here. Okay, so this is the differences here. Basically, this code we are implemented. So you are going to write the block of code here. Okay, here we define the block of code. So same way, here I'm going to write another important example with help of this particular same block of code here. So let me write the simple example. This is nothing but string related example I'm going to write. String related example, something like a string function. Okay, and this is not the class here, so we need to modify to interface here. Okay, whatever we are discussing, this is we need to define to the interface here. Now, once I define this to interface here, now what we need to understand here, after creating this particular string function, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to write like this. Is expecting one parameter. Observe carefully, this is the string function and it is returning string value, and the name of the function again we define as a FUNC, and it is expecting string parameter. So earlier whatever we discuss here, the earlier example it is expected by the integer parameter. Now this example is expecting string parameter, and it is also returning string parameter. Now what I will define, so the same the block lambda whatever we discuss here. So this is another example I'm going to write here. So here I'm going to make as a 2, because this example we are going to discuss with help of this particular string related. Now what I'm doing here, string function. Okay, and here I'm trying to make as a reverse here. So once I make this particular reverse, I'm going to pass as a str. Str is nothing but the parameter is expecting. Okay, so if you are interested, you can write string also. You can write string str, and here I'm going to write block of code. So what is the block of code I'm going to write here? Now you can see here. Now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to return something, because the function internally it is trying to return some value here. So what is the value it is going to return? First I'm going to write a result here. So just I'm declaring one variable, and it is having the type called string. So the name of the variable we define as a result here, and I'm trying to make as a int I. So if you observe carefully, this is the loop I'm using. So why I'm using this particular loop? Because I'm trying to reverse all the characters which are available inside this particular string. So now I is equals to what I'm doing here, str dot length here. Length is a method here. So far we did not discuss this particular method. Length is a method which is available inside this particular string class. Basically, when we are trying to discuss about the arrays concepts here, the length is a variable here, not a method. But here whatever the length we are discussing, it is a method. Okay, so it is a method. So we need to understand very carefully here. So I is equals to str dot length minus 1. Okay, and after this, now what I am doing here, I greater than or equals to 0. Okay, then this is the condition I'm making. Why I'm making this particular I value as a bigger value? Why I'm storing? Because here I'm trying to reverse this particular string here. Now you can see, so we already discussed here. So this is the component assignment operator I'm using str dot caret, the particular I am going to provide. So using this particular caret method, based on this particular index, whatever the value it is available, I'm trying to return here. Okay, I'm trying to return this particular value, and here I missed the semicolon. And what you need to understand here, return result, getting the one. So this is the way of writing the one more lambda here. But here, now what I'm doing is, I'm trying to write the string related information. Here, what we define here, string related concepts we define here, something like we are trying to load one parameter. Based on the parameter, we are trying to repeat the loop, and finally we are converting into the reverse formatting, and we'll try to return the whatever the characters we reversed here. And here, now what I'm doing here, what I will do here, I'm going to write the, like I'm going to call the method. Which method we need to call here? Here I'm making so reverse dot function, which is expecting lambda. So this particular lambda I'm making as a reverse here. Now if you observe carefully, whenever we are trying to run this example, now you can see, so this is the lambda we are trying to make reverse here. Now you can compare here whatever the lambda we given. So this is nothing but this is the lambda I given, and it is converted as a reverse format. How it is converted here? This is important here. First, what I'm doing here, I'm trying to pass this particular str. Using this particular str, I'm trying to load the first length of the characters. How many length of character we are having? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this particular condition will become 5. Why the condition will become 5? I'm making as a -1. So why I'm making this particular -1? Again, internally we are using this particular caret. Caret method internally, it is going to work as a index number. The indexes we already discussed, it is start from the 0. So because of this particular index number, now what I'm doing is I'm making -1. Okay, so I value now 5. So based on this particular 5, every time we are checking I greater than or equals to 0. So how many times this particular loop will repeat? Up to the I value 0. Once the I value will become -1, this will come out of this particular loop here. Okay, this is important here. So based on the time, it will try to repeat 6 times here, and finally it will try to add all the characters into this particular result. Now this particular result will return here. Okay, so this is one of the important example we are discussing here, something like using this particular block of code inside the lambda, and another important, we are trying to converting string as a reverse format. So here we did two things. First one is a block of code in the lambda, second one is string reverse format here. Okay, so any questions here? And so I'm trying to write another one, expressions, or we can write only expression. So this is the another example I'm trying to write here, something like expression. Now you can see this is the expression and this is the lambda. We are making reverse format. Okay, anything. There is no static condition here. Any string you can write, the particular string will be converted into this particular reverse format here. Okay, so this is the one of the important example we discuss here. Now I will move on to the generic functional interface. So far we discuss only the normal functional interface, but how we can write the generic functional interface, because we familiar with the generic concept in the earlier, like the previous classes we discussed about the all the generic concept, how it is going to work internally. Okay, so same way now what I'm doing is I'm going to write the generic functional interface. So the generic functional interface also we can define inside this particular lambda here. So because it is something like we are going to provide the extra parameter. Okay, we are going to provide the some extra parameter. So now what I'm doing is, so this is the generic function I'm creating, something like sum function, and this sum function is expecting t. Okay, he is expecting t. And now what we will do here, we are going to provide the t, and if you are interested you can write this particular the same function, you can write the same parameter. Getting the point? This is we can call it as a we can call it as a generic function. Now if you use the same function into this instead of this particular string here, now what I will do, some function here I'm going to make as a t. Observe carefully. Here I'm making as a t. So this is the logic it's going to use for the string related example. Now if I'm going to run the same example, now we are getting the same output here. Okay, so what is the earlier example we discussed here? Something like a string function. So string function internally it is expecting the string parameter, and it is trying to return the what we can call it as a string return type. And now what I did here, I trying to define the some generic function here. So I define the t here, and this particular t will return, and the particular t it is going to take as a parameter. So same I used here, something like the generic function. Now I'm trying to converting all the logic into string. Okay, and this is also it is useful whatever we discuss inside the another example called this particular numeric. Inside this particular numeric, again I'm going to use the same function, integer. Now you can see, so this error is resolved here. Instead of this particular int, now what we can do, we can make as a the parameter integer. Int will not take. Now you can see 6 we are getting, and 120. Whatever we discussed in the last session, same thing, but only the difference here, generic function we define. Okay, so this is the generic functional interface. This is another important section here. Getting the point? Now another important, this is very important, we need to understand how we can pass lambda as a method parameter or any another parameter. So something like, so just we are passing lambda as a parameter. Getting the point? Whether it is a method parameter, constructor parameter, okay, but how we are going to pass the particular lambda as a parameter. This is another important example we are discussing. So if you observe, this is the same string function I'm going to use here. Inside this particular string function, now with help of this I'm going to write the another important section. So observe, for this purpose I'm going to write a one class. This particular class is going to take lambda as an argument here. Lambda as a argument here. Now how I'm trying to define this? This is one of the important method I'm defining. Static. Instead of creating an object, I'm going to call method directly. So this is a static. Okay, and it is trying to return the string. Getting the point? So this is now what we can do, parameter. Okay, instead of parameter, like okay, we can write parameter only. Okay, the name of the method I'm trying to write parameter. Now if you observe carefully here, what I'm doing here, the first parameter I'm trying to write as a lambda function. Okay, and another function I'm trying to take as a str. Okay, so this is important, you need to understand here. Now what I'm doing here, instead of efficiency, SF we can make. This is for understandable purpose, and str. Okay, observe carefully what I'm doing in this particular method. So this is the static behavior I'm making for this particular method, and it is returning string, and the name of the method I'm making as a parameter. So the first parameter is expecting as a functional interface type. Okay, this is the string function. It is a functional interface type, and another one string parameter. Why I'm making these two parameters here? First one, with help of this particular functional interface, I'm calling one function. Okay, and is expecting one parameter. The parameter I'm trying to pass from this particular string str. So this is another important. Here now you can see. So instead of this particular place, instead of this particular functional interface, we are going to pass lambda as a argument, or we can call it as a lambda as a parameter. Okay. Now observe carefully here what I'm doing is I'm trying to define the main method. So here I'm trying to define this particular main method. After defining this particular main method, now observe whatever the particular string we implemented, the reverse string, we can write the same information here. We can write the same information. Okay. So now, so something like in str. In str is nothing but input str. So this is a message I want to add. This particular lambda added to power of this particular Java language here. And now this is the output str I'm trying to declare here. And now what I will do, so here I'm going to print the message first. This message indicating input str. Okay, so this is input str. Now after this, now what I'm doing here, after this particular input str, I'm going to call the method. Which method I want to call? Here, whatever the parameter method we are having, I'm calling the first parameter. Getting the point? This is important, you need to understand here. So how I'm calling this? Now, as we discuss here, so this is expecting one parameter. Here I'm trying to add str. After this particular str, using str dot to uppercase. Okay, this is the input str. Sorry. This is the input str. Now what I will do, this I'm going to make as a sysout. This I'm making as a sysout. Now observe carefully. Here only, now what I'm doing here only, I'm trying to call inside the println, I'm trying to call the parameter. And the parameter first one, if you observe carefully, I'm trying to implement it as a lambda here. So this is, we can call it as a lambda because it is expecting parameter. Now I'm trying to converting into uppercase. Getting the point? I'm trying to converting into the uppercase. So this is the single parameter I'm passing. So this particular expression, so whatever this particular message we define here, this message is going to convert into the uppercase. All the characters will be uppercases. Now you can see lambda is added the power to Java, but what you need to understand here, whatever all the characters we are having, now it is converted into the uppercase. Now it is converted into the uppercase. Getting the point? But here, what we are doing is, this is the method we are calling parameter, the name of the method. But here, instead of providing the functional interface, now what we are doing is, we are trying to provide as a lambda. Getting the point? This is one of the important example we need to understand here. This is one of the important example we need to understand. Okay. So this is, we are providing our lambda parameter. Later, now what you need to understand here, so this is the single parameter, the input parameter we provided. So one more, another important here. This is very important, we need to understand here. Same method I'm calling. Okay, so this is the output parameter here, and here we can pass anything. Now I'm passing string str, and this is nothing but our This is nothing but the reverse string. Whatever we implemented, the reverse string, I'm going to copy. This particular code I'm copying because this section we already implemented here. So this is nothing but we are trying to make the input string into reverse format. And here what I am doing is input string I am passing. Okay. And after this, now what I will do? Simply I want to print output str. I want to print output str. But observe carefully. So again I'm calling the same parameter method. So this method I'm calling here, and instead of this particular string function, now observe carefully. This is the whole message. So this is the whole message. Basically, this is the lambda. The lambda we are trying to pass as a first parameter. How we are passing this is important. First, without the body, like whenever we are having the single statement, we can pass like this. But when we are having the body, now we are defining body like this. Getting the point? We are defining the body like this, and the second parameter input str we are passing here. Now whenever I'm passing, now if I'm trying to run this example, what happening internally? So first one is converting uppercase, second one is trying to converting like a reverse format here. Okay, now you can easily understand here. This is nothing but reverse format, and this is the lambda uppercase here. Okay, this is one of the important example. Lambda we can pass as a parameter, but how we are defining this is important. So here I'm not providing the single parameter like it is a string or integer. It is basically functional interface. Okay, it is basically functional interface. Now I'm passing this particular string here. Finally, it is trying to return this particular function call we are calling, and whatever we are implementing this entire code, it will convert it into this particular method here. Okay, so this is the way of writing the lambda as a argument here. So any questions here? Okay, now I will define another important concept to call how we can write the exceptions here. How we can write the exception related section we need to understand here. So here, observe carefully, I'm going to write exception related information inside this particular lambda. Okay, so to understand this, now I'm going to write the one more information, something like a double numeric array function. So this is nothing but, here I'm going to write the one of the interface. So numeric, here I'm going to pass array values. So because of this, I'm trying to pass as a numeric array function. Okay, so this is the numeric array function I'm defining. After this, now what I'm doing here, double the name of the method name I'm making as a function, and what it is expecting array type here. And empty array exception. Okay, this is the exception we need to create. Now observe carefully, it is extending from this particular exception class. Now what I will do, simply I'm calling this empty method, and here I will call the super constructor. This is we already discussed here. This is the way of calling the custom constructor. Okay, so this is we need to understand the how the exception handling gate is going to work. But observe carefully, here I'm defining, I'm trying to throw the empty array exception here. Okay, empty array exception. So when we can throw this particular empty array exception, because whenever we are having some empty value something, so I will show you the condition how we can write it. But now observe, This is the way of writing the exception related section. And this is the interface we define, and this is the one of the functional interface. Okay, and after this, now what I'm doing is lambda exception demo. Lambda exception demo. So once I define this particular exception demo, now what I'm doing is here I'm trying to providing, because the lambda function is it is expecting array type of values. So what is the array I'm trying to create here? Something like a double type I'm creating. Okay, these are all the values I'm providing. Okay, these are all the double array, whatever the array we are having. And finally, now what I'm doing here, I'm going to call the numeric function, something like a numeric array function. Okay, so here I'm making array function. So it is expecting one parameter. So what is the parameter it is expecting? Something like a array type here. Now you can make the same array type here. Okay, and what I'm doing here, I'm trying to come up with a lambda body here. And here, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to finding the sum of these particular values, whatever we given, but I'm going to check the all the like if the values are empty, I want to throw some exception. The sum value, the default value I'm making as a 0.0. Now you can see if whatever the n we are having, n dot length, okay, equals to 0. Getting the point? Now what I'm doing here, I'm going to throw new empty array exception. Getting the point? So this is a way of throwing the exception here, because the already the numeric function, whatever the generic functional interface we defined here, it is trying to handle the exception. It is trying to handle the exception with the help of this particular throws declaration. So this is one of the important example we need to understand here. So observe what we need to understand here. Into I is equals to 0. Getting the point? I n dot length I'm making, and I plus plus. So using this particular loop, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sum here. I'm trying to make n plus is equals to, here what I will do, n of 5. Okay, so this is the way we can return this, and finally what I'm doing is I'm trying to return this particular sum. Getting the point? This is important. So what we need to understand very carefully here, how we are throwing this particular exception. From where we are trying to throw inside this particular lambda, I'm trying to throw this particular exception. And by default, this particular numeric array function, it is trying to handle the exception information. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm trying to find out the sum of values which are coming from the particular double data type array. Okay. So now if you call this sum of double values, now here what I'm doing is array function dot function code I'm going to pass as a values. Now if you observe carefully, I'm getting an error here. So why I'm getting an error here? Now if you understand carefully, this is basically the particular exception here. What is an exception we are trying to throw? Here we are trying to throw this particular array empty array exception. And now what I'm doing it, so you can use the throws declaration, where I'm using for this particular method here. Okay, for this particular main method I'm using it. Now if I'm going to run this example, it is trying to print the sum of this particular double values. So it is nothing but 212.1. Okay, but if I'm not handling this, for example, okay, so this I will copy, and now if you observe carefully, instead of this particular values, now what I'm doing is here I'm going to provide as a new double zero. I'm providing new double zero. I'm providing. Now what happening internally? It is throwing an exception. Okay, the first one, it is trying to provide the values. This is the sum of value. Second time, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to provide zero. So this condition is satisfying here. So this particular condition is satisfying. Whenever this particular condition is satisfying here, now it is throwing an exception. The main method is handling this particular exception. So this is the default. This is handled by the our default exception handling here. So if you want to handle explicitly, what you can do, remove this particular throws declaration. Okay, remove this particular throws declaration, surround with try catch block here. Now, so this is also I want to make inside this particular same try block, because exception is same here. Now if I'm going to run, again we are getting the same. Why we are getting the same? Because of this particular print stack trace here. So whatever we define this particular print stack trace here, it will print this particular information. If you're not interested this, now what you can do, simply what you want to provide, you can write here. So here array exception is handled here, and I'm trying to print this particular and if you observe, only we'll get this particular message. So whatever the exception we are handling, and this is the exception here, we're not going to get the particular print stack trace here. It is nothing but from where to where it is called, it is not printing here. This is one of the important example we need to understand here. This is one of the important example we need to understand here. So how we are defining this particular lambda, internally how we are trying to throw this particular exceptions here. Okay, any questions? Okay, so if we don't have anything, another important section I want to provide, this is basically how we can implement the values here. So if we observe carefully, instead of this particular sum, this sum value I'm trying to define outside of this particular lambda. Getting the point? Observe carefully. Now what I'm doing here, so this particular sum I'm trying to define outside of this particular lambda function. Now I'm getting an error. So local variable sum defined in the enclosing scope must be final. Getting the point? Now what happening internally? So this is we are trying to modifying this. So whenever we are trying to modify, it will not work. It will not work here. Okay. So for example, now what I will do, here I'm going to use this particular value. Here I'm going to use whatever the sum we are having. So basically instead of this particular sum, if you are trying to add some number, okay, if you are trying to add some number, only one time it is applicable. So for example here, into num is equals to sum plus Now you can see anywhere we define here num. Why I'm getting this error? Left hand side must be a variable. So this I, okay, basically this is related to the final variable, whatever we are going to use inside this particular lambda. This will not modify here. So something like int num is equals to n of I. Okay, so here we are doing the double. Now you can see, observe carefully. Whenever I'm trying to use this num value, because within the inside we can easily understand here. So I used earlier typecasting like double to int. I'm trying to convert it here, but now observe, if I'm trying to use this particular sum, now it is using. Now it is working. But the particular sum value, what happening internally? We are trying to store into the another number. But the problem, whenever I'm trying to use this section as a sum, this section as a sum, now it is not working. Now it is not working. Getting the point? This is important information we need to understand. Basically, whatever the variable we are defining inside this particular lambda, all the variable are final. Okay, all the variables are final. So we cannot modify this whenever you are trying to write the variable outside of this particular lambda expressions. Getting the point? This is one of the important example we need to understand here. Now you can see whatever the variable we are defining, this is the outside of this particular lambda. Now we cannot use the equal operator here. You cannot modify the value. So if I are trying to modify this, now you can read this error. Local variable sum defined in the enclosing scope must be final or effectively final. Getting the point? It is indirectly showing the variable should be final. So this is one of the important here. Whenever we are trying to write any lambda related, the variable information should be defined inside the lambda. Otherwise, only the constant value, the final variable is nothing but the value is not going to modify. Okay, the value we are going to reusable multiple times here. This is the important example we need to understand regarding this particular lambda example. So any questions? So the variable section here. The variable also very important variable we are discussing. We need to use the inside the lambda if we want to modify any variable. Otherwise, if we want to use the same value, you can define outside of this particular lambda the same value. It is going to reusable here. So this is all about the lambda variable example here. Okay. So if we don't have anything, now I'm moving another important concept called method references. So how this particular method references is going to work. This is one of the important example. Now if you observe the same, whatever the functional interface we are going to use, the functional interface, it is applicable for this particular method reference as well. So the same, whatever the functional interface we use for the lambda, the same functional interface we are going to use for this particular method references here. Okay, so basically this is also one of the important feature. It's like a related to our lambda expressions. The important section we'll call it as a method references here. And now what we are doing here, without executing this particular method, just we are going to provide the name of the functional interface name and method name here. So internally, compiler will override the particular method and it will try to execute the logic. execute the logic here. Okay, so this is the simple example I'm going to write the for this particular method references. Now observe, this is the class because the same functional interface what we implemented, I'm going to use the same functional interface here. So observe carefully here, my string operations I'm trying to write here, and internally static method string reverse I'm making, and one parameter string result here. So once we provided this particular result, now what we are doing is, so whatever the lambda expression we implemented, not this, I'm going to copy here. Okay, now you can see. So I'm making the one method here inside this particular my string operations here. So one of the class I'm defining, and this particular class contains the reverse logic, the string reverse logic. Okay, but what we need to understand here, we need to understand the, so same example what we used method references here. Same we use method references here. Okay, so how I'm trying to use this particular method references here. This is one of the important example we need to understand here. Where is the simple example we define? Yeah. Now here only I'm going to write whatever the parameter we are using here. This parameter is expecting functional interface, the same string function information. Okay. And now using this, I'm going to write the instead of this particular lambda, now I'm going to pass as a method references. Okay. So observe carefully. Parameter I'm passing. This is my string OPS, and what is the method we are having? Something like string str, something like a string str. So now this will return output str. This I'm making input str. So observe carefully what I did here. The last one, it is trying to call from the method references. This particular section we'll call it as a method references. Getting the point? This is one of the important we are discussing here. So parameter method we are calling. Okay, the parameter method. This is the parameter method internally it is calling, and this is the one of the functional interface. This is one of the functional interface. Okay, internally what happening? It is trying to call sf dot function str. So this is the whatever the parameter we are passing here, the functional this parameter is going to call here. Okay, so this is internally it is calling this particular functional interface the parameter. Now you can see, but whenever I'm calling, so earlier we passed as a lambda, now we are passing as a string related. So why I'm calling this? Because this str reverse, this particular str reverse internally it is contain the reverse logic where we implemented. Now you can see my string operations is the one class I defined here. Okay, here you can see my string operation one class we are having, and it is the name of the method, and it is expecting one parameter. It is expecting one parameter. So when this particular method is it is going to call, when this particular method it is going to call the str reverse here, first what we need to understand, the parameter will call. Okay, so this parameter method will call internally instead of this particular functional interface. Now I'm calling method references. Whenever we are calling, what happening internally? sf dot function interface. So this function func is not yet implemented now. Okay, this particular function, it is not yet implemented. Now, when this particular function it is implemented, so at runtime, this function internally, it is going to call this particular method by passing the whatever the input we are having. So if I'm going to make here one breakpoint here, now we can understand the how it is calling internally. I'm trying to run this example in the debug mode. Observe carefully. Observe carefully. Now this is method is calling. Which method it is calling? MyString operation. So str reverse. MyString operation str reverse method is calling. Now if you see what is an str, it is lambda added power to Java. Whatever the input string we provided, the same input string it is passing to this. But how it is passing? So observe carefully. Internally it is calling. Internally it is calling the method. Okay. Now if you see FUNC string, but this particular code is not available because the code at runtime only it will identify. Now you can see we are calling the parameter. Parameter is a method we are calling from here, line number 22, and from this particular parameter we are passing this particular str. So what is exactly the str will contain here? Lambda added to power. And what is the SF here? What exactly this SF will contain here? Now you can see this is reference here. Lambda as argument, lambda we are passing, something like this is the reference of this particular functional interface. Okay, so now this is internally we cannot identify from where it is calling. At runtime only it will identify to call this particular method here. Okay, this is we are going to write one of the functional interface. Okay, using this particular functional interface we are calling this particular method references concept here. Now this is we already discussed here how it is going to call. For example, if I'm going to make, now you can see we are getting an error. Why we are getting an error? Because functional interface method parameter and the method references parameter should be matched here. Getting the point? So these are the important information we need to understand. Now you can see. So what is error we are getting? Now if I'm going to the type of MyString operation does not define the str reverse string. Why it is expecting only string? Why the str reverse method is expecting only string? Okay, another error. If you read this, so the method parameter string function and string in the type lambda as an argument is not applicable for the arguments called string. Okay, so this is not applicable. Why it is not applicable? Basically because the string function is expecting one parameter, so reverse the MyString operation reverse the str reverse we are passing two parameters. Now what you understand here, the functional interface method parameter and method references parameter should be matched here. So if it is not matched here, so this is the error we are going to get here. Okay, so this is the error we are going to get here. So this is another important example we are discussing here. For example, okay, we'll see the two parameter related example. Right now I'm making the same one as it is here. Okay, first any questions regarding this particular method references, how I'm calling it? I'm not creating any object here. So now you can see this is the class name. We are using the two colons here. So this particular two colon only it is going to play important. The compiler will understand. This is the method references concept. Okay, this is the method references concept here. Basically, this is we can call it as a new separator. The colon basically it is added inside the Java from the 1.8. It will try to add a new separator from the method to class here. Okay, and this method internally it should match whatever we discuss internally the functional interface parameter. So any questions regarding this particular method references concept here?
Hi sir, I have one doubt. So the method reference what we are using should be within the package or how it will be?
Okay, so package section. Now, if I'm using another package, where is the string function? Instead of this particular string function, I will change this main class. So, where is that lambda as an argument? We don't have. Okay, now what I will do, I'm copying this and I'm trying to paste into multi-threading. Now, here I will remove this. Okay, we can keep as it is, that one. And here I'm going to run this example. Okay, first what we need is, we need to import this. So once we import this, now you can see, now observe carefully what happening here. The type does not define in the applicable here. So why it is not defining? Let me see any error we are having. So this is be saved here. Make as a, sorry, public we can make. Now, any errors here? Getting the point. Now, this particular lambda as an argument, I come up with some different package, something like multi-threading. I imported the two classes. First one is a string function. It is the generic function, sorry, the functional interface. And this is the one normal class we used here for this particular method references purpose. If I'm going to run this particular example, we are getting the expected result here. Okay, so it is not related to any package, but whatever, if you are trying to use the different package, all the classes and method we need to make as a public. So earlier this method we did not make any public, so because of that we got an error. Now I changed to this particular method public here. Now happily we are executing this particular example here. Okay, so any questions here? Okay, so if not, now what I will do, so from the multi-threading, the class I'm going to delete, and we'll use here whatever we are implementing. So here, now what I'm doing is, this is the class name we are using, and this is the static method. str reverse, basically it is a static method. If you observe carefully, here I define as a static. Now I'm removing this static. What happens internally? Whenever I'm trying to remove this particular static, internally, how it will work internally. Getting the point? This is one of the important example we need to understand. Getting the point? So here if you observe, first I'm trying to create a object of this particular MyString operation. And after creating this particular MyString operations here, now I will modify to this OPS. Now I modify to OPS because this particular method, this is going to call based on the object here. This is not going to call based on the class because it is not a static method. Okay, because it is not a static method. Now we created the object and we pass the reference of this particular object references. Finally, we are calling whatever we implemented here. OPS double colon and str reverse. str reverse, basically it is a one method we define inside this particular MyString operations here. Okay, so this is the another example. If I'm not adding the static behavior, how we can call. This is the way of creating an object here, and finally we can call like this. Now what happens internally? What happening internally? It will try to look up the one of the important example call this particular operation, and based on this particular object references, it will try to call the str references here. Okay, so this is the way of calling the one of the important example called method generics. Sorry, method references here. Okay, so using this particular method references, again I am going to write the another important concept to call generic concept, because we define the functional interface. the same generic concept here. Now I'm going to write the same generic concept with our method references here. How we can write the generic concept with the method references. Now observe carefully. Here only I'm going to write one more interface here. Something like my function is already defined. So generic MR. MR is nothing but method references here. Okay. So this is the name of the interface I'm writing here. Now using this particular interface, I'm going to write as a type. I'm going to write as a type here. And now observe what I'm doing here. This is basically I'm trying to return. So enter value, and this will expect as a array type and second parameter. Okay. So two parameters I'm defining. Now here I missed references values here. Okay. This is the one of the functional interface. Getting the point? This is one of the functional interface I'm defining. Now what I will do, I'm going to write one method reference class. Here I'm going to write one method reference class here, something like my array operations. So this is the class I'm trying to write my array operations here. So inside this particular my array operations, now what we need to understand here, static. So this section we already discussed here. We are going to provide the type, the t parameter. Okay, because this is also we are going to make as a generic concept, and I'm returning int here. So now count matching. This is we already discussed here, because it should match with the functional interface and this particular method references. It should match all the parameters. The method parameter, it should match with our functional interface. Okay. So this is now we understand here while and v. And what we are doing here, count is equals to 0. Into count is equals to 0, because from this particular array, I'm trying to give the whatever the value I given, how many times it is matching. I'm trying to find out this particular example. Okay. So I will here I'm going to write the loop here. Int I is equals to 0 and vals dot length here. This is we already discussed this particular loop, how it will work internally. And here what I'm doing here I'm going to make condition. So vals of I equals to v, and here now I'm going to increment this particular count plus plus. Return count here. Okay. Return count. But observe carefully what I'm doing here. This is the generic type basically. Okay. Here it is expecting the parameter as a generic, and this is also the t we are expecting as a generic type. And internally we are finding one count and we are returning the particular count information. So this is the one of the method reference class we are going to write, and this is the method reference method. But what we need to understand, this parameter should match with whatever the functional interface we are writing. So this is the one of the functional interface we are defining, and it is now matching with two parameters. Okay. And if I'm going to write the same main method here. So before going to write the same main method, now what we can do here, we can write the another important method. So here only we can write basically, instead of writing multiple classes here. Getting the point? So this is also will be the same type I'm making here. Okay. And here count m. Okay. So one is a count matching and another one is a count m. And what we need to write here, we need to write a generic function. It should match with this particular t. Okay, so it should match with this particular T and something like MR writing. Okay, first parameter is completed. Second parameter we can provide vals, and third parameter we can provide as a V. So why I'm providing these many parameters here? Because using return MR dot function I'm calling with the two parameters. So this is the one of the important method. Getting the point? This is one of the important method I'm trying to write here. So count to M method I'm defining, and this is the one of the functional interface we are providing, and two values, and two values. Now if you observe main method, so inside this particular main method, now what I will do, integer input array I'm going to give 10, 20, 30, 10, 20, and 30. Finally, I'm going to give as a 40. Okay, so this is the value I'm giving, and I'm going to create a one more, something like a string str array. Okay, some four values I'm giving. Some four values I'm giving here. Now observe carefully what exactly this particular four values will do here. After creating this particular input error, and this is the string output, like both these are the two dynamic types I'm giving. Like this is nothing but the generic concept. Using this particular generic concept, I'm going to call these two data types here. First one is the integer, second one is a string here. Okay, so finally what I'm doing here, I'm going to call count method. So count to M method I'm calling, and instead of this particular MR, now what I will do, my array operations here. Okay, and after this count matching. Okay, count matching I'm going to provide, and inside this, so this particular vals I'm going to provide as a int error, and instead of this particular V, I will provide as a 10. Okay, inside this particular T, inside this particular V, I'm going to provide as a 10 here. Now what I'm doing here, I'm going to print this. So here I'm going to print this particular method here. Now if I'm running, the count I'm getting as a 2. Now you can see how many times this particular 10 is added. Only one, and second time. Only second time. Okay. And another, the same count time I'm calling. What happens internally? So same thing like my array operation. So I'm going to call the same, not count matching method, and string str, and here I can pass something like AB. This is also I'm going to print this string related. So here we are passing two types. Both we are getting as a 2 2. Okay. And if I'm going to modify this, something like if I'm going to change AB one more time, the second one will get as a 3. Getting the point? So this is one of the important example we are discussing. So method references with generic here. Here, whatever the method references, first one is a generic interface, like it's like a one of the functional interface, and it is containing generic functionality. Okay, and later this is the class I created. This is the class I created, method reference class, and it is internally it is expecting generic functionality. And this is the static method we define. This is also expecting as a generic functionality. Internally, this is expect like here we are providing the functional interface parameter. So inside the functional interface parameter, we are providing something like what we are providing here, method references. If you're not interested in the method references, whatever the logic we implemented, this logic, we can provide as a lambda. We can provide as a lambda. These are all the two important information we need to understand how this particular method references and lambdas are working. Okay, so tomorrow we'll continue the method references concepts here, and most probably tomorrow we'll end up this particular lambda and method references concept. So once we completed this, now we'll move on to the one of the string related example. So once we completed the string related example, so we'll come up with the collections here. Okay, so any questions here? Any questions regarding our today's session? Okay, if not, we'll continue tomorrow.